Oh, that's actually, I hadn't thought of that angle, because normally, obviously, the problem with playing a match is you have to sort of go back in time, as it were, to see all the comments that were happening, whereas it's like it already happened. You've got to almost like see the replay with everyone, right? Right. I see. Okay. One other thing I want to know is this: when you were over in Korea, a very like when you say there, by the way, that like the team didn't win any games, etc. That might sound weird to fans until they realise that like there was a period in time, by the way, guys, where all the like Western pros went in that EG team with like fucking Jaedong, and they won almost no games as well. Like at the time, it was really hard to win in Korea in professional team matches because you had to have a whole team and a structure, and obviously everyone knows the ladder was brutal there. Like I've always told people, if you hear those stories of some like top Western hero and he went to Korea once or twice and he only decided to stay a few weeks and he decided to come back, that's because he was sick of getting his ass kicked. Like he comes from a world where he's on the NA ladder or EU ladder and he goes to Korea, and I've heard the stories from even like the people like Nanawa who were like top at the game. They told me every time you go back there, it's like enjoy being like 30% win rate for a few weeks. And they said even if you know that eventually you'll get through it and get leveled up, those first few weeks it's like torture. You just think like, you start doubting, it's like, am I just shit at the game? Am I never going to be good? What would you say to this? Like, this is a kind of a part of the world we never saw because it's obviously just on practice ladder. So give me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, going there and playing on the ladder. So there's like two sides of it. One is there's people who think like, I'm going to go to Korea, I'm going to play on that ladder, and then I'm going to be amazing. Like there's no extra steps to it, just like having that extra competition. And it's like, well, but if you, on NA you weren't like the best player ever, why do you think going to Korea would suddenly do that? Like there's more to improving at the game than just having better opponents, but having better opponents definitely helps. And then the like low win rate, you know, you go to Korea and you're really struggling. Well, that kind of goes back to the ego thing we were talking about. I think this is one of the things that came off in my interviews back in the StarCraft 2 days of like, when I say something like this, I'm not excluding myself from it. Like I also have an ego. I also struggle with like a day where I lose, 8 games in a row. Like that's hard. But having the like kind of the grit to think about it and kind of like mull over that experience and be like, okay, what can I gain from this and keep going? I think that's what really separates like the quite good pro players from like the best pro players. It's not like Faker never lost games or like Cyril wasn't bad at StarCraft at some point. Like they all had to grind their way up and go through these periods of doubt and reflection and learning from these big sequences of losses. And it's a way to kind of get to know yourself better. I feel like a lot of the times when I go on these big losing streaks, it's not usually because my opponents are doing something extraordinary. It's usually like, I have lost focus. I have forgotten how to take care of myself, or I'm not reminding myself of the good habits that got me to this place initially. And I think we could all use a little more struggle when it comes to games, of just, there's a lot of like, I'm just going to play this thing and it's going to give me everything that I want. And I feel like I learn so much more when it's like, no, I played this game and I don't understand it. And there's a lot of rules and nuance to it. Like the games that excite me, I play a lot of like random Steam games and indie games, and my Steam library is massive. And there was this game Prismata that's kind of like a turn-based strategy game with like random units. And I remember the thing about it that really captured me when I first played it was that I had no idea how it worked. I played it and I was like getting my ass kicked. And I was just like, I don't understand anything about this game. And I kind of felt that way about Go when I started playing that. I played quite a bit of Go. Anyway, that's kind of a long-winded monologue.
What I would also ask is this. One thing I remember, because it was actually the way I even titled the interview, because look, here's the thing. It's not technically clickbait if the thing that the person talks about is in the interview. It's only if you like sort of mislead them. But I just always knew even back then the fire titles, mate. So I remember like part 1 was even called like Foreigners Suck. And like it was, or a shit or something. It was one of those two. And basically the reason why this is significant, I'm bringing it up, is because in the early years of StarCraft, the whole game was based, like we have this term now from League, so at least we have the term now. It was all copium. It was all people just like, no, actually the West is really good. It's just like, we need like time to get more team houses, and then, when we get more salaries, and then when we practice against the Koreans and we play them into it, everyone had this delusion that like NA and EU were going to be like equally as good as Korea somehow, even though obviously like Korea is like, that's been like the side hustle of their country, is just dominating esports games and wrecking the whole world, including China. So like that angle, right, at the time, that was like a shocking headline, dude, because a lot of people would be like, it's bitter that you're not like fucking Idra or Naniwa or something like, but you were right, like comparably, put it this way, people like Cyril show the exception that prove the rule. The occasional person that comes along who is a genius and can do it and can beat these guys, they deserve their props. Whereas like a lot of the excuses back in the day were stuff like, yeah, but like, Stefano won this game at like a weekend LAN. It's like, yeah, but he didn't go to Cordes and win fucking the month-long tournament, did he? Like, give me your thoughts on this, because at the time it was a shocking statement, but I think most people would understand it now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this stance was one of the things that made me less popular. Of people didn't want to hear that like the players that they looked up to, that they related the most to, were bad relative to the best players in the world, and like that was just the reality. And I remember being in Kiev for an IEL, or not IEL, ESL tournament. Yeah. And it was just like, MMA, he was good, but he wasn't like top tier at the time, like comes in and just sweeps everyone. And I'm like, and there were some pretty exceptional Westerners there. And I remember being like, yeah, we need to accept that like what we're doing as a whole, as the West, to do esports, like it's just not as good as what they're doing. And I feel like a lot of the like excuse factory kind of gets in the way of progressing and like actually making the changes that we needed to in order to elevate the skill level of the region. Not that it's like a simple problem, like I don't have a solution for it, but the first step is admitting that there is a problem and like trying to find actual solutions, instead of just pretending that like picking and choosing circumstances where you can say like, oh, no, we're fine. We're doing good enough.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.